This video is going to be a very detailed video on how to diagnose why cold email isn't working for you. So this is going to walk through the entire cold email funnel so we can look at each of the different steps inside of this funnel to see exactly where you're having issues and what fixes you need to implement. So this is perfect for anybody that is having issues making, cold email work, or maybe it's already working for you but you want to improve it even more. This video is going to cover everything you need to know, and it's probably going to be quite a long video, but it's 100% going to be worth it for you to watch through this entire thing because you're going to know exactly how to diagnose cold email issues after watching this. It's going to be very detailed, and I'm going to not hold back on all the knowledge I have. So, but yeah, first of all, why should you listen to me, and who am I? So basically, my background is that I've been building cold outreach systems full time for 4 years. I run scalesprint.io, which is a done for you cold email agency, and I'm a certified expert with Instantly.ai, which is the largest dedicated cold email tool in the world. And I was basically one of the first, or I was part of the first generation of users on this platform, and I've sent over 10 million cold emails. I've booked thousands of calls across so many different industries. And so the funny thing is that I'm kind of born into what I would call like the new generation of cold email, which is something that happened like 3 or 4 years ago when the new automation tools really started blowing up, like the Instantleads and Smartleads of the world, and the ESPs, which is the email service providers like Google and Microsoft. They started becoming more strict with their spam filters, and so that's something that kind of shook up the whole game, and a lot of sales teams were kind of panicking over that, right? But now it's like it's been some years, and I think it puts me in a unique situation that I kind of had to adapt to that immediately. And I've been basically dealing with these modern cold email issues for 4 years, so I have a lot of experience when it comes to dealing with this. So and here's just a quick screenshot. This is like from August, from the time me filming this video, where you can see we get multiple calls per day with cold email, and it's the main source of customers for us here at ScaleSprints, and it has been that for like years. So we practice what we preach as well. We do run some ads too, but the bulk of our calls do come from email. So what is this course actually going to cover? So it's going to cover why people fail with cold outreach, understanding what a successful cold email funnel looks like, how to reverse engineer ideal results for cold email, what metrics to care about versus what metrics not to care about, and then a whole section about troubleshooting. So looking at the offer, script writing, data, deliverability, appointment setting, pre-call nurturing, and I'm going to show you how you can actually know which one of these is the main issue for you and what steps you can take to fix it. And so yeah, that's going to be the later section of this video. So the first part here is why people fail with cold outreach. And I've made this illustration here. And basically what it shows is the B2B market. So this is like the universe of all B2B companies, essentially. Now, 80% of B2B companies are not doing any form of active cold outreach, mainly because if you're running a business and you're getting results and so on, like sometimes you just get a lot of word of mouth and you kind of get comfortable and you don't really have it. There's no urgency to like grow your business significantly with outreach. And so this is like the majority of B2B companies. Now, this down here is like 20% of B2B companies that are actually, actively doing some form of cold outreach. Like they want to grow, they know that cold email is a very strong channel, but what I see with a lot of the people in this section is they kind of tend to build like ad hoc systems, right? Like maybe they did a little bit of research, they saw some ads on like some tools they could use, and they kind of like, put together their own little tech stack of tools they think are good. Or maybe they talk with Claude or something, and Claude tells them how to build their system. But the issue is there's so many different nuances of running a good cold email system that they're missing. And typically these people will not really get ideal results. Another section of these people will be, people who hire maybe, somebody overseas, or on Fiverr, that kind of runs their cold emails for like $500 a month. And again, it's the same issue. It's not being run in a sophisticated way. You're not implementing best practices, and it's kind of like just half-assing it essentially. Now, the best section to be in is this section here. So this is like the small section of people that are actually doing cold email rights and that are building a proper system of following best practices. And so our goal here at ScaleSprint, of course, is to put people inside that bucket of people that are actually running a great cold email system. And this is like the business owners that know that if you want to master any business concept, you need to put in the sufficient amount of time to actually do so. And that's kind of the first thing I have here, right? Like most business owners, they underestimate how much effort it takes to master new business concepts. And so that could be content, ads, cold calling, cold emailing, like whatever the case might be, right? You typically need 10 times more effort than you actually think you do. So whatever kind of like money you wanted to invest, whatever kind of like time you wanted to invest into something, typically you have to 10x that in terms of your expectations and your projections. Um, a lot of people are also stuck in old tech stacks and mindsets, right? And so this kind of ties back to what I said about the new generation of cold email. Like there are still so many people that are using old tools like Go High Level, which is a great tool, but it's like it's not a good cold email tool, or Mailchimp or something like that, or HubSpot, and they're using that as their main kind of infrastructure for cold email, which is just not what you want to do. And I've even talked to like companies that are doing over 10 million dollars a year in revenue that I've personally consulted, where they're still doing, like, they have so many basic mistakes in their cold email system that it's just absolutely unbelievable. And so you really want to make sure that you're not falling into some of these old kind of habits that people have in the old tech stacks and so on. Like things have evolved quite significantly. It's kind of analogous to a lot of businesses, still not having like local businesses like, plumbing companies or whatever that still don't have their social media figured out, right? It's the same kind of analogy I would make here. So the thing about cold email is that it often does have the lowest customer acquisition cost out of all channels that you can sort of look at, but it's also the most technical channel. So it's actually the worst channel that you can possibly try to just like, oh, I'm just gonna study this over the weekend and do it myself, right? Like I think with meta ads you can probably get away with that, but with cold email, no, there's no way. So there are two different options that you realistically have. So one of them is actually committing to fully understanding cold email. That's the first option. And honestly, this is going to take, like, if you really do a lot of studying every single day, it might take you a few months. Otherwise, it's going to take years to understand, right? Because not only do you need to just know the tech stack, but you also need to know how to diagnose deliverability, how to write good scripts, what data sources to use, how email verification works. And you also need to be part of certain communities where you can get updates on like what's happening at the moment. Like, did Microsoft just change their algorithms? Do we need to be concerned about particular email security gateways, right? Like I'm part of so many different like groups and communities, group chats, and so on. So I get these updates. I know what's going on in the cold email space, but that's very difficult for people to do that are just getting into it, right? So some update might just hit and your system goes down and you don't really know why that happened, right? So, but you can do it. You can get really good at cold email, of course, and you can do it yourself. It's not like I'm going to be super biased because I'm an agency. Like you can definitely do it yourself. It's just that you need to know it takes time to get really good at it. Now, the other option is to hire an experienced agency. And here I would try to avoid like, again, like finding a freelancer that's going to do it for like $500 per month, because again, I just haven't seen that be successful. So you do need to sort of invest into a good agency. Now, there are markets where cold email is more difficult for sure. But I wouldn't give up easily on cold email, right? Because once you actually make cold email work, it's just going to keep giving you meetings and meetings and meetings at a very low cost per meeting, right? So you really want to make sure you give it the sufficient amount of effort in terms of like capital and time, which also ties back to the initial point I made here, right, with the 10x rule about putting in 10 times more effort than you actually think it is going to take. The good news is that cold email can make you a huge amount of money and have a very low CAC once you do get it running. And I think my own agency, Scalespin, is a great example of that. Because the customer acquisition cost for my company has been an absolute joke. Like it's so low because I'm very good at running these cold email systems, and I don't pay a whole lot for the infrastructure as well, right? You can get a super solid infrastructure for a few $100s a month. So like, this is really just the best channel once you actually do crack it. And the most common thing I see is teams tend to misdiagnose where problems are actually happening in the funnel, and that's also part of the reason why I've made this video here. So yeah, that's going to cover the first section here of why people fail with cold outreach. The second part here is going to be how to understand what a good cold email funnel looks like. Now, the issue that I see with a lot of people is that they don't really have a data-driven approach to how they kind of build out their funnel, right? So what you need to do, and this is what I've done for myself and what we do for clients, is building out like basically a calculator like this, which is going to show what return you can expect based on assumptions about conversions and volume. So for example, in this case here, you can see 20,000 contacts. We do a 3-step sequence. So basically we send 3 emails to every contact, and we do that over a 2-month window. We're assuming a 1% reply rate, a 22.5% positive reply rate, a 60% conversion from positive reply to meeting, 25% closing rate, and a $15,000 average customer LTV. And then we can see, okay, So what would happen over these 2 months, which is the campaign window here? So we would be sending 60,000 emails. So that would be 30,000 per month. We would get 200 total replies and we would get 13.5 meetings per month. And given the closing rate, that would mean that we would close 7 deals. The average customer LTV, as I mentioned, is $15,000. So the average closed LTV per month would be just over $50,000. And over the 2 months, it would be over $100,000 of closed LTV. So this is how you want to think about it. You want to actually build this out and see, okay, what am I? And then of course you can take these numbers, right, and you can compare it to what are you paying to actually run a cold email, system. Like, are you paying an agency, whatever per month, and how does that compare to the projections in terms of what you can expect with the channel, right? So this is what you want to build out. You want to have a very data-driven approach to it, and we're also going to get back to these metrics. They're going to be really important later in this video here. So, and the things you should be knowing about your business before you're able to do these calculations is the average LTV. And I know this can be difficult in some cases to like know your average LTV if you're dealing with a lot of different kind of ICPs and you're doing different offers and so on. But again, you want to just really be brutal about this and say, okay, like with the audience we're targeting, like what is the average LTV? If you just had to give a number, because it's going to be important to calculate your return on investments. And if you're going into this blind, it's not going to be, it's not going to be ideal. The closing rate, of course, is also important. Now, you want to measure your closing rates specifically on cold traffic. Way too often, I see people that are sort of taking their closing rate from referrals and inbounds, and they're extrapolating that to their cold traffic closing rate, which is a big fallacy. You don't want to do that. It's very different to close cold traffic. If you've never closed cold traffic before, then obviously it's hard to predict this. Maybe you can just put like, to be super conservative, like put maybe 10 or 15% or something. But yeah, that's just what I'd say regarding the closing rate here. Also, you want to know your sales cycle length, of course, your average sales cycle, because obviously you're going to invest upfront into this channel and keeping it running. So you want to also know like how long before we actually start collecting revenue from these deals that we're sort of having here from the system. And you also want to know your TAM size, and this is definitely a big one. I can't tell you how many times I've been on calls with companies and I ask them, so what's the size of your TAM? And they have no clue. They have no idea how large their market is. They don't know how many companies are in the market they're in. And these are like basics you just need to know. And it's also going to tie into this calculation here, because ideally what you want to do is what I call like TAM recycling, right? So you want to map out your entire total addressable markets. You want to find as many companies as many decision makers within the total addressable markets as you possibly can. And then you want to reach out to each one with a sequence every 2 months or so, like once a quarter or every 2 months. You can also do monthly if you really want to be aggressive, but that's what you want to do, right? You want to have a consistent retargeting cadence for your entire total addressable market with cold email. This is how you really make this channel profitable. And then, of course, like you'll remove the people who respond, the people who opt out, and so on. But then all the people who never responded to you, you want to keep retargeting them with this TAM recycling motion. Now, some people might say, oh, well, aren't we just like burning the TAM? Like a lot of people I talk to, they're concerned about burning the TAM with cold email. But the thing is, like, think about when you're seeing ads on Instagram, right? Like you're constantly being exposed to the same ads again and again and again. It's just retargeting. And the same thing goes for cold email. Like somebody might be in one particular position once you reach out to them the first time, but then once you follow up with them in 2 months, it's going to be a completely different situation. Now they're not as busy. Now they're more hungry for whatever kind of outcome you have as your offer, right? So this is something you definitely need to do, is building a motion like this. And then, of course, like once you have your TAM size, you can reverse engineer how many emails you need to send to essentially be able to reach your entire TAM in like 2 months' time. And if you don't have the infrastructure to reach your entire TAM in 2 months, you have a volume problem, right? So this is already kind of, I'm sort of going a bit ahead of myself here, but that's one way to sort of see that, okay, I need more volume here. That could be one of the issues. Will your metrics decline every TAM recycling phase? Yes, but only slightly from my experience, right? So you reach out to the TAM, you start retargeting them after 2 months. You're not going to get the exact like same number of high replies, but I think if you switch up your offering and your positioning every time you recycle the TAM, you're going to see high metrics and it's going to keep working. Like I can't tell you how many times I've retargeted the same people here at ScaleSprint, and I keep booking meetings with cold email. So like, don't be too afraid about burning the TAM or having any issues as it pertains to this whole system here that I've talked about. The next section here is what metrics to care about versus what metrics not to care about. And this is a very important section because so many people are not really they're not tracking the right metrics. And this goes for even like more sophisticated sales teams. Like they're still talking about some of these metrics that used to matter a lot in the past, like open rate. So the important thing here is not all metrics matter. And you need to abandon the mainstream narratives. The mainstream is always behind in knowledge, right? This is, again, what you need to know about this when it comes to the background of looking at these metrics. So the first thing here is the volume. Now, I'll give this a score like 9 out of 10. Volume is extremely important. You want to be tracking how many emails are going out. This is something I actually see a lot of people not tracking their volume. So you ask them like, how many emails did you send last week? And they're not actually sure about it and they don't know how to see it, right? So definitely volume, really important metric to track. And it also, of course, is part of the whole calculation up here. So the second metric is open rates. I've given this a 3 out of 10. Now, why am I doing that? And this is one of the most popular metrics. I always get asked about it, but it's not a good metrics, right? So what can it actually tell you? Well, it can tell you a little bit about whether recipients generally are opening your email. It can tell you a bit about the subject line and preview line and how well they're performing. And it can tell you, are emails even landing in the primary inbox of the prospect, right? Because if you're getting a super low open rate, chances are you're landing in spam. But the issue is most of the time you do not want to be tracking open rates because Apple has basically this security system where it basically triggers the open rate pixel even though the email has not been opened. So it doesn't work properly on Apple devices. Typically, it's going to be inflated. And so many times I hop in calls with people and they say, oh, we have an 80% open rate, but nobody's converting. Well, it's like, you probably don't have an 80% open rate. It's probably because it's being, like the metric is just not accurate. And the other thing is you also have to install an open rate, like tracking pixel inside of the email. The issue with that is it actually lowers email deliverability to do that because now you're starting to install like, these HTML into the email. So like you really need to just not track open rates. The only use case I would say for tracking open rates is if you really need to like quickly see whether or not you're landing in the primary inbox. Like if you launch a new campaign, you're tracking open rate and it's like super high, then great, there's a chance you're probably like it's an indication that you're landing in the primary inbox, but it's not really how you want to be tracking it, ideally speaking. So I give it a 3 out of 10. The next one is the reply rates, and I give this an 8 out of 10. This is a really important metric, probably even like 9 out of 10, to be honest, looking back at this. What is this going to tell you? Well, it's going to tell you, are emails even landing in the primary inbox of the prospects? Is the email relevant enough to generate a response? These are the things that you're going to figure out with the reply rates. Should you be tracking it? Yes, absolutely. Reply rates is a crucial metric, and it tells you a lot about your data quality and email deliverability, especially, right? But now, the reason why it's better than open rate is because your reply rate should still be like, you can look at your reply rate as like checking whether or not your prospects care at all and whether it's landing in their inbox, right? You should always have like a baseline of like negative responses coming through where people are saying, I'm not interested, right? If you're not getting any of those, then probably it's all landing in spam. But it could also just be because like your offer is literally so irrelevant that people just immediately delete your email, right? So this is what reply rate is going to tell you about. It's actually one of the main, metrics that we use to track deliverability. And you can tell that, if you're keeping all variables constant and your reply rate drops, it's probably because email deliverability is messed up, right? Because what other reason would there be that reply rate is dropping? Like the market is not just going to change overnight, right? So it's a great way to know about your email deliverability. The warm-up score, this is a metric provided by a lot of sending tools out there, like Instantly and Smartly and so on. I give this a 3.5 out of 10. It can be an indication of email deliverability performance, but the issue with tracking the warm-up score is that your warm-up score on your sending platform is not really accurate. The main reason why it is not accurate is because, like, in a warm-up pool, you're sending warm-up emails to really low-quality accounts, right? Like Microsoft and Google, they basically characterize all these like warm-up accounts as like low-quality accounts. Like if you were, let's say, doing warm-up hypothetically with like Fortune 500 companies, like the quality of their email addresses would be so high, like just the history of their domain and everything like that. If you were actually getting like a high warm-up score with something like that, it would mean a lot. But because it's like these low quality emails inside of this warm-up pool, like you landing in their primary inbox doesn't really have the same kind of, it doesn't really matter, right? So a lot of people tend to look way too much into the warm-up score and saying, oh, but our warm-up score is like 98%, but we're not getting any replies, right? It's like, well, you don't want to look at the warm-up score in a case like that. Now, what it can do is it can tell you if like your inboxes are completely fried. So if your warm up score is like under 90 or something, like you definitely know something is just completely wrong. Like it's messed up completely. So it can give you, that's why I give it a 3.5 out of 10, is because it does have that use case. The next thing is the positive reply rates. I give this an 8 out of 10. It's a great indication of initial interest based on the copy that you've written. Should you be tracking it? Yes, absolutely. It's one of the main metrics to determine market interest. The main reason why it's not a 10 out of 10 is because you could theoretically have a great positive reply rate, but if none of them are converting into like actual calls, it doesn't really matter, right? So if you're just like reaching out to people and just like asking them a vague question or something and they respond to it, like sure, that could be characterized as a positive response, but it's not really turning into a lot of pipeline. So but it's still a really, really important metrics, because obviously the whole goal of you writing your email copies is to elicit a specific response that is positive from the prospects, and so you need to be tracking this, obviously. The next thing is conversion from positive reply to qualified showing up meeting. This is a 9 out of 10. Of course, this is super, super important. This is a great indication of qualified interest, right? So not just general interest, but like actual qualified interest in this case. And so yeah, this is arguably one of the most important things. You need to how many positive replies turn into real opportunities where you can actually pitch a qualified prospect, right? This is what it's showing. So super important. You definitely need to track this. Now, the last thing here is the closing rate, which is definitely the most important metric. It's a 10 out of 10 importance, because that's what's actually going to bring in the revenue and tell you if your offer is actually good enough for people to pay you money. And so, it's generally an indication of product/service market fit. But of course, this is not really, I would say, a cold email metric. So I'm not going to talk too much about closing rate and sales in this video. But I just wanted to mention it here in this metric section here. So now we are going into the troubleshooting section of this video. And the first thing we're going to look at is the offer itself. Now, first of all, let's define what we mean by offer. So an offer is essentially, what does the prospect get? Like what is the deal that we have here, right? That's the offer. An offer is not, just mentioning your service. So it's not just saying, hey, we run your ads, we run your cold emails, we build you a website, right? These will not be offers. These are just simply services, right? So here's some examples of offers. Like this is an example of like, here's the deal you're getting. This is what you get. So one could be, we build and operate an end-to-end cold email system to book you 20 to 60 sales calls per month with a guarantee that it works in 90 days. This is compelling because the offer is a direct, valuable outcome. Everyone wants more meetings, right? It has very low perceived efforts slash logistical intensity for the prospects, and there's a real risk reversal, right? So it's like, okay, it's end to end, done for you, right? Low effort, great results, combined with the guarantee, right? So this would fall under the category of a great offer. It could also be, we fully script and edit your next YouTube video for free, and if you like it, we can work together. This is compelling because it's low friction and it's a free valuable asset, right? So this would be like a foot in the door kind of offer, and then you, of course, once you've delivered this, the goal would be to then sell them the main service, right? Another one could be, we will build and split test landing pages for your e-commerce store, and if they don't perform better than your current ones, you don't pay. So again, this is low perceived effort slash logistical intensity for the prospect, and there is a risk reversal tied to the offer here. Another one could be, we build you 3 free static ads for your company, and if they don't produce a lower cost per call than your existing ads, we refund you. Again, same kind of concept, right? Like this is no risk, low perceived efforts, and a completely, like, this is a no-brainer, right? I would probably say yes to this if somebody reached out to me with that. So now another question, of course, is, will these perform, right? And the truth is, you have to test it. Like sometimes you'd be very surprised by the market. Like they just don't respond to certain things. Other things they do respond to. Like we're dealing with humans, we're dealing with psychology, so it's always like super difficult to predict, and that's why you have to like test things. You have to test things, and you have to test different offers to see what really sticks. And I've also included this picture here, which is I believe Alex Hormozi's like value equation, and you can see how it kind of ties into some of the things I've talked about, right? Dream outcome times perceived likelihood of achievement, and then you have here the time delay and effort and sacrifice, right? So ideally, you'd want the dream outcome to obviously be super great and something they really want. Perceived likelihood of achievement needs to be really high. For some of these offers, maybe that's showing that, hey, we have done this for XYZ companies in your industry, right? That's going to increase the perceived likelihood of achievements. And then you want these to be low, right? The time delay needs to be low. Ideally, the results should be happening quickly. And also the effort and sacrifice needs to be super low as well. And that's going to, basically create the value of the offer. Now, it's very, very important that you know your market sophistication level, right? Some markets are extremely solution aware and they're being exposed to the same offers again and again and again. So even if you have the most crazy guarantee in the world, you're saying we're gonna get you this amount of revenue. If we don't do that, we'll pay you back $5,000. But they've seen that before. Like it's not even going to change their mind, right? So some markets are just like that. Now, if you're not in a market that is very solution aware, you're gonna have a very good time running cold email. Like it's gonna be super easy for you. But yeah, this is just the reality for most companies, especially like agencies like myself, right? There's just a lot of saturation. And what that means is that even if your offer really follows the value equation here on paper, it might still be so common that people just don't trust your offer or they don't care about it. So the only real way to overcome this issue, if you're really in a saturated market, is by having a more solid infrastructure for your distribution, right? So if you're actually just a lot better at like running ads, or you're a lot better at cold calling, you're a lot better at cold email, right? If you're just better at these channels, like you're gonna have success because there is gonna be demand out there, right? If we're looking at like agencies and things like that, like marketing agencies, there's always going to be demand for it. And so if you're just better at running the channels, even though you have the same offer as other people, like you're still going to have success, right? So this is what I would call like brute forcing your way into the market. The other thing is you can attach a unique mechanism or hyper relevant social proof. So if I'm reaching out to a company and I literally got the craziest result for somebody that looks just like them, obviously this is going to stand out, right? This is going to be something that everyone can say. This is impossible for everyone in the market to say, and so it actually counters this issue of market sophistication level and the solution aware problem. Unique mechanism as well, right? This is always something that if you can mention something that you do differently in terms of how you perform the service, that can also break through some of this saturation that might be out there. So this is the strategy I would use today if I were you. So basically take all your previously recorded sales calls, objections, and everything, and you should feed it to an AI model and then ask it to output the most common objections and worries that your prospects have. Then use that to come up with 10 to 20 different ways of creating your offer and see if they fit nicely into the value equation above. Do not apply your own biases because it's really easy to do this when you're setting up your offer. Like you have a unique perspective that your prospects and ideal customers might not have. So you need to like really truly put yourself in the shoes of your prospects, right? Even though it can be really difficult, and you want to avoid the expert's fallacy. So for example, for myself, right, like what I want to do is, because I'm quite advanced in the field of cold email, is I want to talk about advanced like email deliverability stuff or advanced infrastructure stuff or advanced data stuff. But like my ideal customers don't really care about that, right? So if I were to like talk too much about that, I'm falling into the expert's fallacy where I fallaciously assume that everyone has the same level of understanding and knowledge as me, which is just simply not the case. And so this is something you really want to be careful about. And this also depends on your ICP, right? Like if you're dealing with, you're selling to like enterprise level teams and they're like super sophisticated, like of course you want to mention some of the stuff that would actually intrigue them, and you don't want to like go super like basic level messaging. So it also depends a bit on your situation there, but just be careful about the expert's fallacy because it is easy to fall into that. A bonus tip is what most people don't really think about, but like you can literally pay for market feedback. Like you just pay somebody that's in your ICP, like just pay them $100 to hop on a call with you and tell them like all the issues they're having that kind of pertains to the service that you provide. People will do that, right? If you just pay them, like they might just hop on that call and just tell you whatever, and then they might even end up buying from you. Who knows, right? So that's a little trick for people there. It's like you can do some cold outreach campaigns and just say, hey, I'm not looking to sell you anything. I literally just want to hop on a quick 15-minute call to hear your biggest pains, and I'll pay you $100 for it. Right. And so you do that 10 times. Sure, it's going to cost you $1,000, but now you have like 10 direct customer feedback data points that are going to be so valuable for structuring your offer and also like just generally running your cold email system. So how do you know if the offer is the problem? So one important way to track this is the positive reply rate. So assuming you mentioned the offer in the outreach email and not at a later stage in the sales motion. So go back to the TAM model that we showed before and see what reply rate you need to basically reach your goals. That's the calculation I showed above. In most cases, your positive reply rate should be over 10% and ideally a lot higher. Another way to kind of evaluate this is your conversion from positive reply to meeting. And a good offer should ideally convert, 20% or more of the positive replies into actual qualified showing up meetings. So these are like the main metrics you want to look at. Like if you have your offer in the email, are people responding in a positive way? And also, are they then converting from a positive reply to an actual call? These are the things you want to use to see if the offer is the problem, right? If you're getting a good reply rate and your whole infrastructure is set up in the right way, you're getting a decent, again, like people are responding, but just not in a positive way, and nobody's really hopping on calls, then it's probably an offer problem, would be the first kind of conclusion from there. The next part here is script writing. So, also what you'd call copywriting. The way we're going to define this is the email templates used for outreach. So, the initial emails and the follow ups. So, script writing is certainly something that is industry dependent, but there are definitely common patterns, right? In some industries, you can get away with longer copies. In some industries, you have to write shorter copies, more to the point, be less formal, so to speak. And in other industries, you want to be a bit more formal in the way you approach them, right? If you're reaching out to, let's say, tech founders or something, you can be a bit more casual. Whereas if you're reaching out to, let's say, maybe I don't know, family offices or private equity firms or something, maybe you have to be a bit more professional. But yeah, basically that is something you need to keep in mind here. The North Star is basically write a copy that I would respond to in the prospect shoes. So again, it kind of comes back to knowing your prospect and the exact ICP, like and even like down to like what age group is my ideal customer profile usually, and is it men or women primarily? Like what is the exact like person that will buy from me, and like can I write a copy that they would respond to? If you know your industry well, if you know your industry, again, try to really act like a person in the ICP and just be brutally honest with yourself. Like, would you respond? And if the answer is not immediately yes, then there's probably work to be done on your script writing. So here's some general rules on kind of how to write your scripts, and of course, like I can make a more detailed video about this, but here are some rules to follow here. So for the subject line, usually you just need to keep it vague. It should look like it's coming from like an employee or potential customer. Of course, you don't want to have it like be manipulative. You don't want to actually lie in the subject line, but you still got to keep it vague. It's going to be something that makes them open the email. And a lot of people are like, writing something in the subject line is just so blatantly obvious that it's a sales email and that it's a mass email as well. So it's like, yeah, definitely I'll just keep it vague here. The same thing goes for the preview line. Like ideally, and the preview line here is basically the first part of the email that they see in the preview, right? So you want to have that also not immediately reveal that it's a sales email, at least in most cases. For the copy itself, ideally you want to be keeping it under 80 words. Instantly, they did a huge benchmark study in 2026 here, and they found out that copies under 80 words just tend to perform better. So I'll let the data speak. They have like millions of emails that have been sent from their platform, so we're just going to use their we're going to take their word for it. And then also you want to use one single clear call to action. You don't want to have like multiple things. You don't want to say, oh, take a look at this funnel here, like click on this link for this landing page, also go over here and watch this like free document. Like you don't want to send them in a million different paths. You want to have one clear path that they need to take. Then you also want to test the way that you structure your scripts. So in some emails you might do like a pain statement followed by a solution followed by CTA. Maybe you do pain, solution, guarantee, CTA, or just solution immediately into a CTA, right? Like there are many different ways where you can like set this up. But you want to test different structures to see what kind of works the best. Something I would recommend everyone do is basically take the Hemingway editor. You can search for that online, the Hemingway app, I believe it's called. And it's going to basically, you can like paste in your email copy, and it's going to tell you whether or not it's easy to read. And it's going to tell you what sentences to change to make it more digestible. Because the way that most people read emails is not that they're like actually reading it line by line. and really like analyzing it in their brain. Like most of the time, it's pattern recognition, it's skimming. These are the kind of ways that people read. And so it needs to be something where their eyes can like glance over the text and is like short sentences broken up by periods very frequently. And then they can sort of see that, okay, this is what it's about, blah, blah, blah. They can read it super, super quickly. So yeah, this is really important to do. So, how do you know if script writing is the main problem that you're facing? So, one great way to know this is if your offer converts well on other cold channels, right? Because if your offer is already converting well and you're mentioning the offer, let's say in your ads and your emails, but your email's not performing, then probably it could also be a targeting issue. But one issue here could definitely be the script writing, assuming you know your data lists are already of high quality. Another thing is people actively compliment your business slash your offer. So when you get on sales calls, people say, "Wow, this is like great. I think your website is great, and I really like your offer." And this is all like sometimes prospects will do that, which is a great sign for your business that if people are complimenting you. But if your email is not converting, even though this is happening, typically your scripts are just off. People don't really get it. It's hard to read, or the messaging is bad. Another way to know if script writing could be an issue is if deliverability is not an issue. So let's say you have your domains, they're in good health, like they're getting a high reply rate. You've checked the public blacklists, everything seems to be fine. If that's the case, again, also it could mean that the script writing or the offer is an issue. Another thing here is you know that you're sending to the right job title, but it's still not converting. So let's say your main ICP is like CEOs of a particular segment of small businesses or something, like founders or whatever. And you know that you're sending to founders. Like you've checked through the data list, you've had AI review your data list, you've manually checked it like a sample of it. It's the right people, but it doesn't convert. Again, ties back to script writing. Reply rate and positive reply rate is low despite all of the above, right? That's kind of the thing you want to take into account here. So what is the fix? Well, the fix is very simple, just more testing. That's all I can say here, right? And so you want to basically have at least one full sequence, so the initial touch points and all the follow-ups for like 1 to 2,000 prospects before you make any decisions on this. Again, it also does depend on the size of your total addressable market. If you really have like a small TAM, like maybe you have to draw conclusions even faster than this. But for like larger TAMs, then this is kind of what you want to look at, like 1 to 2,000 prospects that have went through a full sequence before you make like super strong decisions on it. Also, one concept that you definitely need to try is from Eric Novoslavsky. I'll give him credit for this. Is chunking up and down. Basically, what is meant by this is you can have a copy that is very focused on the benefits of what you do, which is like the sort of, I would say, the conventional sales wisdom is that you want to focus on the benefits and not the features, right? This is the common saying in sales. But in some cases, all of your competitors is talking about the benefits and no one is actually talking about the features. So they're already like fully familiar with, like, they're like, yeah, you're going to get me more meetings. I've heard this 1,000 times. You're a lead generation agency. I know what it's all about. But they care more about the unique mechanism that you have, right? And so what you want to do is you want to, that's called like chunking down. So you focus more on the features, and you want to test that, and then you want to like really only focus on benefits and see how that performs versus only focusing on features. And so this is a great way of also testing your messaging. That's gonna be very helpful for you. And as I mentioned, run your copy through the Hemingway editor. It makes it, and then also make it incredibly clear what you actually do. So it's clear what you do, and it's very easy to digest the email. This is going to help massively. If nothing works, despite you having run like multiple different tests on this, then your offer or your targeting is a more likely issue with the system. The next part here is regarding data. So this would be the contact data that you use for your campaigns. Now, the main things that can go wrong are the following. So basically, the first one is your data source is not giving you accurate data. So you have low data accuracy. Second thing is your data is extremely saturated. This is what I'd call low quality data. So, for example, you're kind of using some generic list that every one of your competitors is also using, right? Another issue is your data is not verified correctly. So, like you have non-verified data, or you haven't verified it in the wrong or in the right way. And then another issue could also be that your search is too broad or too narrow. So basically, you don't have a good process for your data searches. So how do you know if data is the issue? So one way to know, same as above, is that your offer converts well on other cold channels, right? That's always an indication that there could be issues with the data. the reply rate is low and deliverability is dropping quickly. Because basically, what happens is once your reply rate is dropping, because your data is bad, you're also going to get worse deliverability, right? And worse deliverability is going to result in less replies. So it's kind of like a death spiral almost, where if your data is not accurate, it's just going to ruin the infrastructure, and you're going to get no responses in the first place, anyways. So that's another way to know it. Another thing is you're getting a lot of people who tell you they're not the right target. So you're just getting people saying, hey, I'm not the right guy for this, whatever the case might be. Another one is you're getting a lot of auto replies from people who changed jobs. So this could suggest that this is an old data set that you're dealing with. Another thing is also that you're seeing a high bounce rate, which is going to tie into sort of email verification, which we are also going to get into. So this is how you can basically solve each one of these issues. So the first issue we're going to talk about is your data source is not giving you accurate data. So there's low data accuracy. And what you want to do, first of all, is do a manual review of 20 randomly selected people on your list. This is always a good practice to do. Really try to dive deep on these 20 randomly selected people here. Like look at their job title, their LinkedIn page, the website, and everything like that. Everything you can get your hands on, and then really review it and see, okay, how many of these are realistically qualified based on what I can find in terms of publicly available information. Also, yeah, and this also ties into this, like look through the website, LinkedIn, and everything to see if they seem qualified. If a large percentage of them are not qualified, that probably means your entire list is messed up, right? Just statistically speaking, if you're seeing bad leads within the sample, it probably means the entire list is messed up. So, what are the solutions for this issue? Well, one solution is to pick new data sources, right? So go ahead and find other databases that you can use. And also, what you want to do is use AI to basically do some deep research and find databases and directories that would fit your ICP. So sometimes you can really find some niche data if you go on a specific directory. You can scrape that, you can enrich it with a tool like Clay or whatever you prefer in terms of data enrichment. And this is going to be a huge help, right? Is using AI to find niche databases, because probably a lot of your competitors are not doing that. They're just kind of sticking with the main databases like Apollo or LinkedIn Sales Navigator and so on. So this is a great thing you can do in terms of like finding new data sources. Another thing is change the keywords in your searches. So sometimes people just put in like super basic keywords, right, when they do their searches, and they're getting like really inaccurate data because of that. And that's also an issue. So, for example, one example I could use here is that let's say you put marketing agency, like you want to target marketing agencies. So you put in the keyword marketing agency. The issue is you could still be getting software companies that have built a software for marketing agencies. And so they include that keyword, right? And also a lot of the keywords and like industry filters on databases, this comes from like user reported data, right? So somebody might say they're in one industry, but really they're not, right? Let's say they put like real estate as their industry on LinkedIn. And so now they're a real estate company inside of the database, but maybe they just provide software for that sector. And so they just put that in on LinkedIn when they created their profile. They didn't really care. And now your data list is going to be messed up because of that, right? So switch up the keywords as much as possible. You can also, like what I have, for example, for myself is I've trained an AI model on like the internal instructions that Apollo has given on how to do searches on their platform. So it understands deeply how to do Apollo searches, and it can like find the right keywords and industry filters to use and the right exclusion keywords to use once we do our searches. Now, the probably the biggest factor here, and or I should say, like the thing that's going to make the biggest change for you is using an AI pre-qualification agent. That is really going to change the game for you. And so basically what that is, imagine you have your entire list of companies that you've scraped from whatever database. And now you're using an AI agent that literally goes in and looks at all publicly available data points for each lead on that list. So it looks through the website, it looks through the job title, it looks through LinkedIn. And so it's doing deep research on each prospect using an API. And then it spits out maybe a lead score, or maybe it just says like yes or no based on whether it thinks they're qualified, right? This is by far, this has been the biggest game changer for us. It's an absolute game changer. You can get your data accuracy so much higher by using this, and it's actually going to nullify some of the other issues. Like even if you have like keyword problems, this can just solve it, because now you have an AI agent that's able to go in and research and find out whether or not these are actually the right leads. And so the process I use for this is I use something called Spider.cloud, which is like a web scraper, and that goes in, that's connected to an API key to my Claude. Basically, it goes in, it scrapes the website information, and then from there, I just connected my OpenAI API key. I use ChatGPT 4 Mini, and then ChatGPT will look through the data that Spider.cloud received from the website and then qualify them based on that, right? And that's all done through Claude. So I literally just upload a list and then it starts the qualification process. And it's really simple to do, but it's highly, highly effective in terms of pre-qualification. So after implementing all of these solutions that I just spoke about, again, you want to redo the 20 lead sample test from above, and then just basically repeat this process until your list accuracy is better. So this is a very this is a system where if you actually do this, like eventually you're going to have a good list to use. Now, another issue is that your data source is extremely saturated, right? So you have what I'd call low quality data. Again, what you can do is use deep research with AI to find databases and directories that are more niche and that people might not be spamming as much. Another alternative, which not a lot of people are talking about at all, is you could, instead of like reaching out to the main decision maker, you could actually be reaching out to the info ad email of the company and try to get an introduction. Or in a lot of cases, especially if it's SMBs, the founder or the owner is actually going to check the info ad email, right? Because there's a lot of stuff he cares about in that inbox, and so you can get access to the owner through the info ad email. That is not getting as much cold outreach as his main email address is. So that's something to keep in mind. This is something that you should definitely try if you haven't already. We've had a lot of successful campaigns using info ad emails. Another issue is that your data is not verified correctly. So there are a lot of different data verification tools out there now. I'd stick with Million Verifier. They have good prices and they're just a proven player in the markets. I've used them for years now. It's just been great. No complaints from me whatsoever. And then, yeah, you want to just make sure that you also do this on your data list every 2 weeks. A lot of people don't know that. They think you just like verify a list one time and then use it in 6 months' time. Like, no, you have to literally re-verify it every 2 weeks, because if you don't, you risk just sending to emails that no longer exist because people always change jobs and email accounts are deleted and so on. So you want to redo this every 2 weeks. It's not that expensive to do anyways, and you can automate it. So it's really, really simple to just set this up and do it. Now you want to send to valids mainly, right? So the ones that are characterized as like valid emails on Million Verifier. That would be like your main kind of list, right? But if you're dealing with a smaller TAM, let's say your TAM is under 20,000 companies that you can possibly sell to in the world, you need to get the most out of your data. So you 1000% need to do catch-all verification, right? And we use Bounce for this purpose. And Bounce has been a huge game changer. Like you can basically, do the catch-all verification. So, typically on Million Verifier, like maybe 25-30% is going to be catch-alls. And Bounce can take all of those. And I find that like sometimes over 90% of them are like completely sendable after we use Bounce. So it's like a huge game changer. We've had so much success with Bounce, and I would highly, highly recommend you do this. And the funny thing is about the funny thing about sending to catch-alls is that you're also going to essentially have like, they're going to receive fewer emails because most people only send to the valid ones. So you're typically going to get a higher reply rate and a higher positive reply rates using catch-all emails. So highly recommended. Another thing is that your search is too broad or too narrow, which I spoke about, right? And what you want to do there is, again, new keyword searches, AI pre-qualification agent. These are going to help you to essentially do better searches on the databases and get more or get a higher data accuracy. So the next part here is email deliverability, and that is going to be defined as the ability to consistently land in the primary inbox and avoiding the spam folder. And again, as I mentioned in the very beginning of this video, it's one of those things that have really changed over the years. It's one of the most dynamic parts of cold email, right? If everyone would just able to like land in the inbox, it would be a whole different game. Like it would be a lot more simple and straightforward to do it. But because it's cold email, it's like it's one way I like to view it is it's sort of a private distribution network. Whereas ads, right, you're sort of tapping into somebody else's existing distribution network, which would be Meta, for example. But in this case, you have to sort of create your own little infrastructure. And because of that, you don't really have like a platform that's like able to consistently deliver your message in front of people. So you have to take it into your own hands and optimize deliverability. So the thing with deliverability is that back in the day, you could just kind of send out as many emails as you want to. It wouldn't really be an issue, and people were just absolutely printing. But then, of course, like the automation tools came, and now everyone has access to these, and it has changed the game. And if you are really somebody that wants to truly crack cold email, you have to take this issue of deliverability really, really seriously. And part of the reason as well is that um, if if you have deliverability issues, it's very hard for you to diagnose the other parts of your funnel, right? You can't really know if it's the scripts, if it's the offer, if it's the data, because deliverability is kind of going to be that annoying thing that's going to make you unable to even get any data from the market because your emails are not even landing, right? So that's kind of why it's annoying to deal with. But once you also understand it, like you can get a huge advantage over your competitors because most people don't have a deep understanding of deliverability optimization. Now, sometimes people ask me, will cold email still be around in 10 years or 5 years or whatever the case might be? And and also another question is like, will it work? Like, will it be around is one thing, but will it work? Like, will cold email stop working? And what we have to really understand here is what I call the deliverability equilibrium, right? Because what happens is more and more people start sending cold emails because the channel works so well. But the more people that send, the stricter the spam filters get. And the stricter the spam filters get, the less people start sending because now they're not getting results. But now less people are sending it, the spam filters will become less strict because Google and Microsoft, they ideally don't want their spam filters to be too strict, right? So they now lower it because it's not as much of a problem. But now people start sending again. And so it's kind of like always this balancing act where at some point it's like, okay, there's the perfect balance of people are sending emails, but only the best people are getting results. And Google and Microsoft, they don't have to make their spam filters like too strict because there are like tons and tons of legitimate like reasons to like reach out to somebody cold, right? And people are setting up like new email accounts all the time, so new businesses, right? It's not a strange thing to like set up a new email account and start sending out 20 emails per day. So Google and Microsoft, they have to be really, really careful that they're not messing up the email deliverability of like regular startups, right? That's a really, really bad thing for them. So they always have to be careful that their spam filter is not too strict. That's a lot of yapping, but what I'm trying to say here is that cold email will always work for the best people. Always. Like there's just no way it's not going to work unless email as a whole channel gets like completely modified. And now you have to like connect your ID or something to the email accounts. Then, okay, that's going to be a bit crazy at that point. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. So the channel is going to be around. And the question is just like, can you master it? Can you actually build a proper cold email system? And yeah, again, like this plus the offer are some of the most common issues that I see. So, what are the factors determining your email deliverability? Well, one of them is going to be like, are your sending patterns natural? So, are you sending in a very robotic pattern, and are you sending like very high volumes of, of emails, which obviously, from the point of view of the ESPs, is going to look very suspicious. So yeah, basically that's one thing. Another thing is domain volume and automation indicators. So does it look like does it look like it's automation or does it actually look natural? So these kind of like similar and tie into each other. Domain age and reputation is another one. So how long has your domain been around and does it have a good general reputation? Um, Another one is a natural text pattern and variations in the emails you're sending. So obviously, no human would be sending the exact same email over and over again. And what we're trying to do here is we're going to try to look as natural as possible, right? We want to look like a legitimate sender, even though it's automated. Another thing, which is arguably the most important one, is manual spam reports. So how many people are manually reporting your emails to spam? The reason why that's so important is because obviously this is the most accurate data points that Google and Microsoft can possibly use is like, are our users reporting this domain to spam? If they are, then we want to protect our users and we want to make sure other users don't get the same emails, right? So that's why it's so important. Like theoretically, if you got 0 spam reports, you could probably just like scale to like 200 emails per email account or something crazy. But yeah, that's really important. Bounce rate as well. So obviously, not a lot of human senders would be like sending to a bunch of non-existent email accounts, right? That would just not be a natural thing, and so it's going to reduce your sending reputation if that happens. And also spam words, so like common words that are associated with spam, sales guarantees, marketing, investments, large sums of money that's mentioned in the email, and so on and so forth. So, how do you know if deliverability is actually the issue? One good way to know this is just the response rate is low. Typically, under a 0.8% response rate will tell you something's probably wrong on the deliverability side. Another thing is domains can be found on public backlists as well. That's, of course, a huge indication that you're having deliverability issues. Also, you're getting a lot of hostile responses. And if you have a high suspicion of people manually reporting you to spam, that's also an indication that deliverability is an issue. So if you're getting a lot of people that really just don't like receiving your emails, those people are probably also reporting it to spam. So yeah, that's another indication. A high bounce rate, especially if you can see that the bounce codes you're getting once you get the email bounces are talking about spam. Another one is bad performance on inbox placement tests. So you're running your inbox placement tests through a tool like Instantly, and you can see that your email's not landing. Of course, that is a red flag. Fairly high positive response rate, but overall reply rate is low. So like people are responding positively, but the general overall response rate is low. Industry usually responds well to cold outreach. So your competitors are getting good response rates, but you're not. And also, you have to keep in mind here that mid-market and enterprise will inherently have a lower reply rate compared to SMBs. So it also depends on your ICP as well. You can't expect every industry to have the same kind of reply rates. Like if you're looking at founders of SMBs, like they're going to be always on their email and they're going to respond a lot of the time. If you're reaching like mid-market and enterprise, some people are just not going to respond as frequently as SMBs are. So, what are the best practices for deliverability? So, on the infrastructure side of things, there are many different ways to set up your cold email infrastructure. And lots of people are trying to sell you their solution, right? So, you'll probably get a lot of people saying, hey, try my new private infrastructure or something like that. What I would recommend is just running your infrastructure through a Google reseller. This is like, I've tried all of it. I've tried private infrastructure, I've tried Microsoft, I've tried Google, I've tried the whole thing. And the best option we've found is simply using Google resellers. So we have one particular one that we found here at ScaleSprint after vetting so many different providers that we're using. And that's just been working super well over the years. So that is what I would recommend for consistent email deliverability performance. And if you, by the way, if you want like introductions to like any of these tools or providers, just reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to help. So to be extra safe, like if you really want to be safe with email deliverability and cache is not really an issue, you can set up two sets of infrastructure, right? So you have one that's actively sending, and then you have another part of the infrastructure which is in a warm-up pool. And then basically you rotate these domains every 2 weeks, right? And so one part of your infrastructure is always going to be in a warm-up pool. The other one is going to be actively sending cold emails. The reason why this works so well is because if you have if you look at sort of the reply rate on a domain on a monthly basis, if 2 out of those weeks in that particular month you're getting a super high reply rate because you're in a warm-up pool, it's going to balance out any inherently low reply rate you get on the email side. Another thing is, for those 2 weeks where one part of the infrastructure is in the warm-up pool, you're also not going to get any manual spam reports at all. So it's actually going to have the amount of spam reports you get every month for your infrastructure. Huge difference. So that's why you should definitely consider this if you have the cash for it. If you don't, you just set up one set of infrastructure, but it's a good option to use. In terms of like your settings on the warm-up side, I recommend 30 warm-up emails per day with a 3 like basically you want to start from 0 and then it needs to increase with 3 per day once you initially set up the infrastructure, and then have a 70% reply rate. And then once you start sending cold email after the warm-up period of about 2 weeks, which is the sort of time you want to do that, then send 20 cold emails per account and 20 warm-up emails per account, and you should have a 70% reply rate on the warm-up emails. That's just what I recommend at the moment to follow this structure here. Now, on the copywriting side of things, you want to avoid spam words. If you don't know what spam words are out there, you can use Mailmeteor's spam checker. So just like take this and search it on Google, and you will find it. And it's going to tell you once you paste in your copies which one of the words are spam words. Also, you want to do a lot of spin tags on both the subject line, the main body of the emails, and even the signature. If you don't know what spin tags is, it's basically like a way to randomize the words that are going out. So I've included an example here, right? So instead of you sending the exact same template to every prospect, it's going to randomize it. So it might say hi, hello, or hey at random. And then you can see here, I'd love to learn, hear, find out, right? So it switches up the words in the emails. And this is going to make it look like a more natural sending patterns from the point of view of Google and Microsoft. And so this is really important to do this essentially. So you're mixing it up. There's a built-in spam word, spin tags creator on Instantly that you can use, but you can also very easily like prompt Claude to do this for you. So it's really not that difficult to do this, but it's going to make a huge difference. And the more spin tags, the better. So the more variations you can include, the better. And you want to remember to do this in the subject line as well as the main body and the signature, because this is going to generate completely unique emails every single time, and it's going to help you quite a lot. Also, you want to include no links in the emails. You want to not track open rate for the reasons I explained earlier in the video. You want to make your email very friendly as well, which sounds kind of weird to mention in an email deliverability section. But I think the main reason why this matters is because if you have a friendly kind of voice in the email and you're very respectful and you're thanking them for their time, it's harder to get mad at a person like that. And then also what I do is have like a very smiling profile picture as well. So you just look like a really nice person, like somebody you wouldn't want to like, send to spam. So this actually matters quite a bit. This is kind of like a hack that most people don't talk about. So make sure to do that too. And then switch the structure of the emails every 2 weeks. So even though you're using spin tags, like you still want to like mix up the different parts of the email, because like Microsoft and Google, they can still see if it's like the same general structure going on, if all the emails might be different in their words, but it's still like the exact same structure. So just like tell Claude, like, hey, rewrite my copy, but put it in a different structure, so it looks like fundamentally different, right? So do that every 2 weeks is also going to help you quite a bit. And then on the data side of things, make sure everything is verified as I described above. Make sure it's accurate data, because if you're not reaching people that are qualified, a lot of people are going to report you to spam, rightfully so, because you should be sending to people that are qualified. And you're also going to have a low reply rate, which is going to send you into the deliverability death loop that I talked about earlier. Also, what I'd recommend is remove ESGs unless you have like a good reason to use them, or you have like a specific set of accounts that you want to specifically use to target people using ESGs. Now, if you don't know what ESGs are, it's email security gateways, and typically it's something that mid-market or enterprise level companies will have. And basically, it's like some of them are Proofpoint and Mimecast. You can look this up and see what it is, but it's like it just makes it more difficult to land in their inbox. It's almost like a custom spam filter, and the issue is that once you start getting blocked by a lot of ESGs, it's gonna like have a negative effect on your email reputation. So what I do in most cases, especially if it's a larger total addressable market you're dealing with, is I just completely remove them. Like I don't even care. Like just get rid of them. So that would be sort of my recommendation in this case here. But you can include them if you really want to and you really need to, and it's a smaller TAM. The next thing here is appointment setting. So basically, we're going to define appointment setting as taking a positive reply and turning it into a booked appointments. So there are different elements that determine effective appointment setting. The quality of your reply once you do receive a positive reply, and how good is your reply to their reply. Your speed to lead, we're going to call that STL. Channel quantity, and what I mean by that is like the number of channels that you're using to reach out to somebody once they've expressed interest, and then also your follow-ups. So how do you know if appointment setting is your issue? So some indications are your reply rate is good, positive reply rate is good, but not many people are converting. What you have to keep in mind here is that if this is the case, it could also be an issue with your next step in the sales motion, right? So maybe people are sort of just responding because like, yeah, whatever, I'll just take this lead magnet, but then the lead magnet doesn't lead anywhere essentially, right? So that could also be an issue here. But again, this is an indication. Reply rate is good, positive reply rate is good, but people are not booking meetings. Another thing is people like your offer and you have a good closing rate. So your offer works, but you're not getting appointments when you do cold outreach. Another thing is it seems interest is not being converted at the level it should be. So something seems off, right? Like it's like we're getting all these like responses, but people are not really booking in. So the best practices for appointment setting is the following. So regarding reply quality, you want to really make sure you deeply answer the questions that you get. Like really thoroughly go through and answer the questions that you get. Nobody wants a vague answer followed by a calendar link, right? That's not what they want. They want their questions answered. Another thing is to include a clear offer of what they get, a timeline, a clear overview of next steps, and social proof. Like I would say these are like the things you got to keep in mind, right? What exactly is the offer? Explained very simply. What's the timeline in terms of like what does it look like from them getting on the call to them starting to see results? What's a clear overview of next steps? Like what do they need to do on their end? And also social proof. Like why would they hop on this call? Like do you have any track record? Who are you? That kind of thing. Then also you want to pre-handle a few of the most common objections. So let's say you have like one objection you're always getting from every single prospect. You want to handle that in your reply, ideally in the initial reply, so they don't ask that later down the line. And then also drop any unnecessary information and don't try to over justify anything. Like if you mention your pricing here, like don't try to over justify it already. And then, have one clear next step. Don't send them in 1,000 different directions. Don't give them a bunch of PDFs they need to open. Don't do all of that. Just send them in one particular direction. The next thing is STL, so speed to lead. And you want to aim to get back to people as fast as possible. And the faster, the better, essentially. So what you want to do is build a notification system and have somebody whose job it is to respond to leads quickly. This is really important. And you want to track your speed to lead and set goals for it. So you want to have like a particular goal you want to reach with the speed to lead. And if it's not currently possible for you, just due to manpower or whatever the case might be, to to actually get back to people fast, you can also consider using an AI agents, which is something they have, for example, on Instantly. So that's something to consider. It is better with a human, but if you're responding to people within like 2 days and your reply rate is just terrible, like it's better to have an AI agent at that point. The next thing here is channel quantity. So you want to basically use multiple channels to follow up with leads once they've shown interest. So follow up with the lead on LinkedIn, on phone, on SMS, and even consider direct mail. This is an interesting one. So let's say you have like a CRM of like 100 people that responded very positively on email. If you send like each one of them a letter or a gift or something by mail, you're probably going to book a ton of meetings by doing that. You could maybe get like even 30% of them to actually respond at that point, right? So like, just be creative with it, right? These are some of the ideas you can try to implement here if you're having some issues with your appointment setting. Um, Also, more touch points make you stay top of mind, right? So if you do all of these things, like you're going to stand out and you're going to be top of mind. Like you're going to be more omnipresent than the other salespeople that are trying to sell them the same kind of service. So your competitors are going to be overshadowed by you. Another thing here is follow-ups, right? So you need to follow up quickly and frequently after a positive response. And if you're really, really having problems with appointment setting, you can consider the 3x3x3 method, or the triple three method, where basically you're using 3 different channels to do 3 different touch points over 3 days. So let's say this is like email, LinkedIn, and phone. So every day for 3 days, you're sending them 3 messages: one on email, one on phone, one on SMS. Where like not on phone, on email, LinkedIn, and phone or SMS rather, right? So you're reaching out one touch point on each channel every day for the first 3 days after them showing interest, and that is really, really going to help you to convert more of these people, because now it's impossible to avoid you. And also, never stop your follow-ups, right? If somebody has responded with interest, you can just build an infinite sequence and you can continuously add new steps to it, right? You can include things such as like industry secrets, social proof, new offers, downsells, updates, anything like that you can include in the sequence, where you're just continuously nurturing people over the long or over a long period of time, essentially. So yeah, that would be something I also recommend. The last part of this video is going to be around pre-call flows. So this is going to be the sequence of messages and touch points for the prospect after they book the call. Why does this matter? Well, people have just received an email from you, right? So they don't know a whole lot about you at this point, and you need to just educate them more. So the main reason how you know that your pre-call flow is the problem is very simple. You book plenty of calls, but the show up rate is low. Super simple to understand this. And how do you fix it? Well, you need to send assets across multiple channels, right? So you want to send video content. This is always great. Like you really ideally want to put a face to what you do. So have a video of yourself that's like over 5 minutes that kind of just explains what you do and shows some proof with your face in it. I think so many people are really, really missing out on this. They're not showing their face. They seem like an anonymous company, and it's just like, you don't want to do that. You want to have your face out there. Also, some written content. So you can do some long form, short form content where you're just writing a bunch of stuff about your offer or something like that. You can also send over the onboarding steps so they know exactly what is going to happen if they do decide to work with you on that call. And also just sending them a bunch of social proof. Also, focus on email and SMS in the pre-call flow, and also connect with them on LinkedIn as well, and send them some stuff there too. A great thing to do is send them a personalized selfie video. So every time you book a call, just pick up your phone and just film a video of yourself, just talking to them specifically and saying like, hey, I just did some research on your company, super excited to talk with you. And if they watch that video, they're really going to feel bad about no showing that call, because you filmed the personalized video for them where you said you did research. So they don't want to no show after they've seen that video. And the main North Star here is, again, reminding them why they booked the call, and also why it still makes sense for them to show up, right? Because some people might book the call, but they forget why they would even show up to the call. So you want to constantly remind them why they made the decision to book the call in the first place. And do not assume that people will actually talk to you just because they booked. You need to constantly reconvince them. And this is just something that's just the nature of sales, right? People say things and they don't do them. Like, it's not an industry where people are just going to keep their word. So yeah, just make sure to do that. And also create an infinite follow-up flow for cancel calls and no-shows until they eventually rebook. So just put them into this like infinite sequence as well. And you also, once they no-show, you can use a message like, I saw this somewhere. I can't remember where. I didn't come up with this system here, but it does work quite well. So, you can say, hey, first name, I noticed you didn't show up for the call yesterday. We do a lot of pre-call research, and I have some interesting things to show you. I send an updated invite for same time tomorrow. Does that work? Right? So now You're making it very easy for them to reschedule because you already sent them a new invite, and you're also making them feel guilty for no showing because you're saying that you typically do a lot of pre-call research, right? So this is going to definitely help them, convince them to get on the call again the next day. So that's basically going to cover it for all the different steps here. And in terms of like the next step for you now, after watching this course here, is look at all your stats and compare it to the whole diagnosis guide above. You want to check out which sections seems to be the biggest problem for you. You want to implement the fix, review the numbers again, and repeat. So you just want to have an iteration process. It's really difficult. Like, it's not easy to do marketing and sales. It's a really difficult thing. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of human psychology. There's a lot of things you need to take into account. And so it's not easy. You really need to do a lot of testing. And there are cases where cold email might just not be the right channel for you. Like, there are industries, there are situations where even if you test it, it's just not going to work, right? But the important thing is to not give up. You need to test every marketing channel for your business. It's going to be the lifeblood of your business. It's going to be your ability to actually like find working marketing channels and make them work over the long run. And if you just give up on every channel after trying a few things, like your business is never going to grow. So it's really important to not make that conclusion immediately. But there are like some industries where it's just like really, really difficult, and you're better off focusing on other channels. But yeah, so that's just something to keep in mind. Now, if you need a team to basically implement everything I've mentioned above, so actually building you a proper cold email system based on all of this experience, and we're actually going to know how to implement all of this stuff and find out where in the funnel we need to improve things and build a proper cold email system for you. You can check out the links in the description and the pinned comments. The website is www.scalesprint.io, where you can see what our offer is and our case studies and so on. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to speak to you soon.